God's good creation. I am delighted to welcome all who are here to Canadian Mennonite University for face-to-face, a town hall conversation on Naawi-Oodena. My name is Cheryl Pauls and I serve as president of CMU. Tonight, as all days, we are honored to gather, live, and learn on the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Dakota First Nation, and the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation. We are grateful for their stewardship of lands and waters since ancient times and for the generous hospitality extended through Treaty 1 of 1871, as signed by First Nations and settler peoples. We acknowledge the truth of past harms and ongoing wrongs and seek reconciliation for the flourishing of Indigenous peoples and all relations. I trust this evening will be a step of reconciliation as we celebrate and learn from the senior staff team of Naawi-Oodena. Naawi-Oodena represents a 160-acre span of land, a big block down Grant Avenue. Yet it stands for a whole lot more than land development. It's an extraordinary vision for a vibrant, mixed-use community with far-reaching intersections, something that honors the land as mother. Tonight we celebrate that the land is no longer called Kapyong Barracks or tied up in the courts, and that a whole lot of good planning is becoming a reality. So why this presentation here at CMU? And what's a face-to-face event anyway? Well, as for why we're here, it's because we're neighbors. And we at CMU and the surrounding community want to learn what it will mean to be good neighbors and good relations with all who live and learn and connect through Naawi-Oodena. As for face-to-face, that's the name of a series of community conversations through CMU. It's a way of centering our learning, our identity, our lives in relationships first. As for the shape of the evening, there will be a presentation from these 5 panelists here in front of us, and then a time of question and answer. And then at the end, there'll be time to look at the model that's in the back after we're done here. The audience here today, people in the broader neighborhood surrounding CMU, and some who are part of this learning community daily. It is my pleasure now to introduce the presenters, the senior staff team of Naawi-Oodena. First of all, Chief Gordon Bluesky of Broken Head Ojibwe Nation, who is the chairperson of Treaty 1. Secondly, Jolene Mercer, Director of Governance for Treaty 1. Then Waylon Sutherland, who is the CEO of the Treaty 1 Development Corp. Tim Daniels, the Chief Development Officer of the Treaty 1 Development Corporation. And Dave Thomas, Planning and Design Manager. And then there's a few others, Vic Savino, the Director of Communications, and a few others that are around here this evening as well. Please join me in welcome. We look forward to this. Thanks so much. You're welcome to sit there and talk. Hello. Or come here, whatever you're comfortable with.
Hello. Can you hear me? Is this on? Yeah? Awesome. Thank you so much. First of all, I want to say thank you to CMU. It's so amazing, the support that we received throughout the years in regards to not only information sharing, but sports teams putting up our logo, things like that. So just the recognition that at the end of the day, we're all treaty people. So we're super excited to be here, and thank you so much. As mentioned, my name is Waylon Sutherland. I'm Chief Executive Officer. We have a presentation today. We don't want to keep it too dry. We're gonna present to you, give you a history of who we are, how things came about. We have a model over there that we want to be able to show you as well. And we want to give time to the participants to ask questions. But without further ado, first we're going to ask our chairperson, Chief Gordon Bluesky, to say a few opening remarks.
Hello. Bonjour. I'd like to say welcome everyone here tonight. My name's Gordon Bluesky. I'm the chief of the Broken Head Ojibwe Nation. I just recently returned back from the Treaties 1 to 11 gathering, national gathering that happened in Edmonton, Alberta. So it came in last night a bit late, about 3 in the morning, and feeling a bit groggy today. So I'm going to do my best this evening to be on point and be ready for any questions that come up. But I do want to, say miigwech again to the CMU for having these types of events. I must say, though, the last event that I did attend here, and this was, I think, had to have been almost 8 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, prior to us even having our comprehensive settlement agreement signed off. And this place was full. I don't know if anybody was here. I'm sure some of you must have been. Even up there and the stairs, and people really wanted, I guess, to hear the initial plan. So I don't know if tonight's a sign of good things, that they're comfortable with what's going on. Maybe it is. Maybe it is the case. Maybe there's enough information going out there that people are feeling comfortable with what's happening. I must say this, so it's a very high-profile piece of property. We've been kind of promoting it, as I was yesterday, as the largest urban economic development zone for First Nations people in all of Canada. And something to be proud of, and it's something for Winnipeggers, Manitobans, and Canadians to be proud of. It's something that I, even with talking to some of my friends that I know in Aotearoa and New Zealand, I've been also talking with them as well as about the developments that we're doing here. And I was inspired by them about 2002 when I went and spent some time over there as an internship doing resource management with the Hauraki Maori. And it was really interesting because they had a lot of stuff going on already within large urban centers like Auckland, New Zealand. And so when I talk about the stuff that we're doing here at Naawi-Oodena, the former Campion Barracks, it's kind of old news to them in terms of the collaborations that they've been doing with their super cities and reestablishing themselves within their economic territories and zones. That's the thing that we've been kind of discussing over the years, is that First Nations economies isn't something new. It's been, we've been displaced out of our economies. We've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, as I'm sure some of you either know firsthand or understand through just living within Manitoba and Winnipeg. We were talking about that at the mayor's office there last week when we had the opportunity where we brought some items acknowledging our relationship with the city of Winnipeg, and they've now put those items within their council chambers. But it was acknowledged by one of the knowledge keepers there that there was a time that our people weren't even allowed into Winnipeg. There was a time, and it's not too long ago. We're talking about my grandmother's age, where they had to get a pass to come into the city and occupied spaces that we kind of take for granted today. But anyways, it's a good thing for me to be here tonight, to see everyone here that I'm going to assume is excited to hear more and more about what we're doing. I've been really focusing a lot of my own self in the work that I do, because there's a lot of negativity that can really consume you working in a First Nation community. We have the highest unemployment rates, we have suicide rates, we got just a lot of sicknesses, drugs now. Now we got the introduction of meth that's entering into our communities, not only in our communities, but the city of Winnipeg. And it's really challenging. And, when I started the campaign to run for chief, I started sitting down in family homes, and a lot of times people were coming with me with all the problems, all the negative comments, and all this energy that I had to carry with me. And I just like to acknowledge that, when I was sitting with them, I had to remind them that, we got to start looking at what things are positive that are happening within our community. What are the things that we can start building on within our nation versus focusing on the negative or the things that could be or might happen or so on. So, I'd like to just kind of send that message here tonight is, there's a lot of things that people, I guess, perceive, some misconceptions of our communities, some myths that are happening out in the community that we can't have any firsthand say on. But I know one thing, though, with the very limited and amount of resources, I'm still very proud of where I come from, the Broken Ojibwe Nation. My grandmothers and grandfathers had a lot less resources than we had, that we have today, and they've managed to build a community like Broken Head that I'm now leader of. You know, we got a casino, we have a hotel, and we got a grocery store, 2 gas stations. You know, we're working on building a new school. We're just now putting the designs together in a water treatment plant. You know, we're going to be opening up a new administration building, hopefully within the next 2 years. So, you know, that's all from the work that was done previous to me. And that was all built on the foundation of just hard work and determination. You know, if we had more resources coming into our communities and we had more support and positive energies coming into our communities, you can only imagine what we could be capable of versus starting with very little and working our way up. So I'd just like to leave that message to everybody here tonight. And for me, it's an exciting time. You know, I'm really happy personally with coming out of university, the time that I spent in New Zealand, and starting to work at the Treaty Land Entitlement Committee in Manitoba. When we first made the selection of the Kapyong Barracks, that was in 2004 for me when I first sat down at the tables. And at that time, it was all in dispute. Canada was disputing us, the province was disputing us. And you know, I'm going on 18 years later now, sitting here as the chief of my community, and also seeing that, you know, coming full circle, seeing that the comprehensive settlement agreement was signed and being implemented. And I had a hand in the implementation of that as well. But not many people, and I would say for sure not many leaders of communities get to see issues like that go full circle into where we are now, where we're on, you know, the verge of creating the next urban reserve in Manitoba and in Winnipeg, but also probably the largest opportunity for First Nations people across Canada. So I'm very fortunate. I've had a lot of leaders that I've worked with over the years, the past 18 years, that have passed on now. 2 chiefs that have passed on now that were part of this process, so I acknowledge them, and I know that they sit with us when we do the work that we're doing, and I'm sure they're proud of what we're doing here today. So again, I'd like to just say miigwech and thank you, and I'll let our development staff to get into some more of the exciting stuff. Miigwech.
Awesome. Thank you. We want to give our chief a round of applause. You can hear me fine? It's like I can't. It's so weird. I can't hear it. Yes. Anyways, thank you so much, Chief Blue Sky. You could see, you know, it was something that is not new. It's since 2004. And so I have our pretty much all the experts here today to come and answer questions that you have. Like was mentioned, Jolene Mercer, our Director of Governance, really working with our First Nations to build up that nation, which she's going to present. Dave Thomas, the lead design, he'll be able to answer questions as well. And Tim Daniels, our Chief Development Officer, who was in charge of our master planning, which he's going to talk about in the presentation as well. But one of the key things that I really want the crowd to understand today, that a lot of work, time, effort has gone into this whole process. We went from working with various levels of government, raising capital. We had a meeting recently, like the chief was mentioning, and getting various levels of government to understand the complexity of what we're doing, but also the investment that we're bringing into the city of Winnipeg, because we're Manitobans too. And one of the biggest things that we want people to understand is it's not us and them. We're all treaty people. We're doing this for the betterment of our community. We're going to create jobs. We're going to create employment. We're going to bring investment into the city of Winnipeg. And so we're going to have our senior staff do the presentation. Once it's over, we're going to open up the floor and answer questions. So you guys okay with that? Awesome. Okay, I'm going to start it off with our Chief Development Officer, Mr. Tim Daniels.
Thank you, Will, and good evening. My name is Tim Daniels. I'm from the Long Plain First Nation, and I'm the work for Treaty 1 Development Corporation as the Chief Development Officer. You may have heard of Long Plain First Nation and the Arrowhead Development Corporation. If you haven't, I was the former CEO for 16 years with the Long Plain First Nation, and Long Plain First Nation has 2 urban reserves and 2 cities in Manitoba, one in Portage Prairie and one here in Winnipeg. The one here in Winnipeg was the first urban reserve in the city of Winnipeg, so have some experience in developing urban reserves and opportunities that come out of these urban reserves. So I'm going to take you through this presentation. So Naawi-Oodena is a 160-acre piece of land here in Winnipeg on the corner of Grant and Kenniston, and it presents a very large opportunity, like as Waylon said, not only for the Treaty 1 nations, but for Winnipeg and Manitoba. Next slide, please. So it's a rare opportunity. in terms of developing this site because it's a mixed-use community, within a community. You know, in working on the master plan, it was an 18-month process for us. We did a lot of engagements with the City of Winnipeg, our Treaty 1 nations, but also the city departments. You know, you can't build a community without working with your neighbors and the city in terms of the infrastructure, usage, communications, and so forth. So there was a lot of work done in this master plan. There was also a lot of reports commissioned. There was market studies commissioned on residential usage as well as commercial usage. So finding that right mix in the community. So like I said, the master plan was 18 months in the works. And keep in mind, this was all done under COVID. We had started the project in 2019, and we started with 5 staff actually, and we had to build up our development corporation and start executing the work plan that was set forth within the comprehensive settlement agreement. And then lo and behold, COVID starts, and we had to pivot a lot of our strategies, how to engage with people, because we were locked down at home, and our movement was limited. So that's when we did a lot of Zoom meetings. But we had just started a really good process in terms of engaging people and coming up with some concept plans to start discussing how Naawi-Oodena would look like. So we took it online because we had selected some sites here in this area to do some town hall meetings just like this, to talk about the project just like this. But we had to take it online, and we did it online through Zoom, and we did it with our partners, Canada Lands Company. And Canada Lands Company is the federal developer. They take on Canada's federal surplus lands and redevelop them. Mostly a lot of our former army bases in Canada, in the city of Calgary, city of Edmonton, in Vancouver, and out in the East Coast. So they've redeveloped these former army bases. So that's who we're working with on the site, because they're going to be developing this 160 acre site along with us on this Naawi-Oodena. And Canada Lands Company told us when we did our engagement online, there was 800 people watching us live that evening in June 17th, 2020. And that was the largest town hall meeting they've ever had in their 25-year history. There was a lot of interest in this site or in this project from the city of Winnipeg. And for the most part, about 70% of those people watching online were from this region here in Tuxedo and Winnipeg and River Heights. So there was a lot of engagement, a lot of surveys done, a lot of information gathered, and so we continue to plug on through COVID on this master plan. So it's 109 acres that Treaty 1 Development Corporation is going to develop, and 51 acres Canada Lands Company. Next slide. But I want to hand this over to Jolene a little bit here, because this didn't happen since 2019. Since we started, you heard it from the chief. He's been on it since 2004. So we want to talk a little bit of history, why this is and why Canada Lands Company is working with us.
I'm going to stand up because I'm kind of short for these chairs. Hello? Okay. Plus I can't see. I also just got in at 3:00 a.m., so I need some reminders up here. So we just wanted to go through a little bit of the history. I should introduce myself first. Jolene Mercer. I'm the Director of Governance with Treaty 1. I've been there for just over a year. I'm from the Peguis First Nation. I grew up in Selkirk. And so in 1871, that's when Treaty 1 was signed, so first treaty in Canada. And in the 1990s is when the first treaty land entitlement agreements came out. So when the treaties were signed, there was an acreage amount in there that was promised to each family, each person, and that never came to be. And so what happened is we had treaty land entitlement agreements, so to try to correct some of the discrepancies with the amount of acres that were listed. Then back in 2001, Canada's strategic disposal of the land started to happen with Kapiong Barracks. So that's when we knew that they were going to be disposing of Kapiong Barracks. And actually Broken Head and Long Plain laid claim to Kapiong Barracks as federal surplus lands. So when any federal lands are declared surplus, whichever treaty area that they're in, that treaty area or the communities within that treaty area, the nations, have the first right of refusal under their treaty land entitlement agreements. And so in 2004, the barracks closed. So in 2007, the Treaty 1 Nations united, so all 7 came together, started working together, and they signed a political accord. So this political accord outlines how they're going to work together and what they're going to be working on together. And they established a governance council at that time. So one of the things that Chief Blue Sky always mentions is that our treaties were signed back in 1871. At that time, we never relinquished the governance structure that we had. And so it's always been in existence. So the accord is just saying, okay, we're going to come back together now and reestablish our relationships with each other. And also in 2007, there was a land transfer and an injunction. So Canada transferred the lands to the Canada Lands Corporation, and then Peguis First Nation filed for an injunction. And so it was filed in federal court. So in 2009, it was determined by the courts that it was an invalid decision to dispose of those lands. And because there is a legal duty to consult on the disposal of any surplus lands. So that was the first time, I guess you could say, the Treaty 1 Nations won in court. However, in February of 2011, Canada appealed that federal court decision. And in May 2012, the Treaty 1 Nations united again to build a solid case for treaty land entitlement. And in December of 2012, the federal court upheld the decision. And so Canada filed a second appeal in 2015. And then in August of that same year, again, the court decided that Canada had a duty to consult to the 4 respondents. So there was 4 communities that filed on behalf of all 7. And basically it's very costly to go through court, right? So that had a lot of play in that. And then in 2018, there was an agreement in principle. So they came to an agreement. Canada decided that they weren't going to keep appealing it through court. And so that was the start of the discussions and the negotiations for the comprehensive settlement agreement. So what that agreement does is it outlines our responsibilities, so things that we have to complete prior to the conversion of the land to reserve. So I don't even know how many things that we have to do. There's a lot. So we had to come up with a governance and management agreement between the 7. How are we going to work together? How are we going to resolve disputes? And then we had to work with the city of Winnipeg and come to an agreement on municipal services and what are those services going to be, how are they going to be paid, and how much is going to be paid. And so we concluded that agreement with the city this year. It was signed in July of this year. And I just want to say we had an amazing time working with the city and very proud of that relationship and very receptive relationship. So we did a lot of work. We hired a facilitation team and really looked at what were the interests, where was the city coming from in terms of their interests, and then what were the things that we were interested in, what was important to us. And so I think taking the time to really build the foundation and build that relationship between us and the city's administration really went a long way because we understood where each of us were coming from. And so in 2019, the comprehensive settlement agreement was completed, and that agreement was to sell 68% of the Kapiong Barracks to the Treaty 1 First Nations. And so that's what we're in the process of doing right now, is completing the purchase of those lands. We're hoping to have it completed, I would say, by the end of October at the latest. And so there's a lot of different things have been going on, and that's why it's still a field for now. And COVID really did impact the timeline for development. But the Comprehensive Settlement Agreement also outlines Canada's response to things. And so a lot of times it takes a very long time to convert lands to reserve. And so some communities are like, why are we moving so quickly on this? This seems really fast. Well, we have a Comprehensive Settlement Agreement, and it's timelined. So it's timelined as to when we have to complete everything that we need to do. And it's also timelined in terms of when Canada has to respond and when they have to complete their pieces of it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jolene. Put your hands together for Jolene Mercer. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Tim right away. But again, I just wanted, again, to share with the audience here how important it was or is for us as a nation to be able to communicate and share information. We've engaged the communities. I think we engaged our First Nations. During COVID, close to 50 times. We've had online sessions. We did a market research with the neighborhood Tuxedo and River Heights. And again, it's things like this. Jolene mentioned our relationship with the city of Winnipeg. Well, it started by us walking into a room and sitting across a table, and for 5 minutes we didn't talk. And I'm like, why aren't we saying anything? And once we started that dialogue and discussion and broke the ice, we recognized, well, Jolene said it best. They needed certain things, we needed certain things. Figuring that out is how you build a relationship. So I just those are some key points for us. I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Tim Daniels once more.
Thank you, Waylon. The people you see here, sitting here in front of you too, we have a long history with each other. We're not strangers to each other. We have a proven track record within ourselves, within our respective First Nations. In fact, we go back about 21 years or so. About 21 years, we were former youth council members and youth coordinators for Treaty 1 and for Assembly Manitoba Chiefs. Youth council member for representing Peguis on the Treaty 1 Youth Council, myself, the Treaty 1 Youth Coordinator, Assembly Manitoba Chiefs Youth Council representing Brokenhead, and Jolene Mercer, also on the Assembly Manitoba Chiefs Youth Council, and
Youth Coordinator.
Youth Coordinator. Yeah. So we've all crossed paths, and we've all seen our careers develop. What our path we're going to do, but what we all intersected on this project, and here we are today working on this milestone project. Dave Thomas, I have experience in working with Dave Thomas in Long Plain. I don't know if you see that hotel, the brand new 5-star hotel, the Wyndham Gardens on that urban reserve. Well, him and I were working on that project for many years. And when I started working for Treaty 1, I said, I want this guy to work for us. I've always wanted to have a planner and architect on staff, so he was working for the Dakota Ojibwe Tribal Council, and we convinced him to start working for us because we all have experience in working together. So we do have a proven track record in terms of our experience as colleagues, but also on all the projects we've worked on individually. As I mentioned, the Long Plain First Nation setting a trailblazing here in Winnipeg in urban reserve development. Peguis, Mr. Sutherland here involved in the acquisition and the development of that land here on the Peguis Reserve. Mr. Blue Sky here, Chief Blue Sky, also former lands manager. Very, very good leadership in terms of his role of land manager. National land manager, chairperson. So he was a skilled negotiator. He worked for us prior to becoming chief. He was our director of lands on this project. So again, he's been involved right from the get-go, and Jolene, a new person joining the team in the last year. But Dave Thomas, again, been working with us since we started. So we do have a proven track record in developing lands and creating partnerships, and also municipal relations is a big thing. And we have a great relationship with our city councilors and the mayor. So, we all know it's a premium location right on Route 90. And just to let you know, in the get-go, the big question is, are you going to allow for the widening of Kenniston? And we are. that this never been widened because the land ownership was been in dispute all these years. So now that the city knows who the owners are, that will be widened in the future. yes, like that bottleneck of traffic is going to be a sort of nice smooth flow of traffic down Route 90 because we want people to stop in our future businesses, but we want people to travel through to get to their homes and other sites across Winnipeg. Real cool. So I look forward to that as myself. So yeah, we all know the high traffic counts, and sorry, I was supposed to be wearing my glasses, so I'm kind of squinting here too. So yeah, it's a big shopping centers. A lot of retail planned for the site. We did a commercial study, a market study, and there's going to be $1.2 million of commercial space, meaning shopping centers and strip malls and offices and so forth. So there's a lot of space for that on the site. But I want to hand it over to Dave because Dave, we worked together on the master plan, and we're going to go through a little bit some of the zones on the site. So do you want to talk about the different zones? There you go, Dave.
Oh yeah. Hello. Is this? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for having us here tonight. David Thomas. I'm from Pegwas. And I've been working in architecture for the last almost 25 years. And most of my experience has been working with Indigenous people and Indigenous projects. And really happy to be working here. It's like a dream project. We're working with the team here and being part of this project, as well as like being, adding something to this community. And I grew up, actually, when I was 2, we moved to Brooklyn by the King's Theater there, so I spent a lot of time there. So it's a familiar place. My parents would play ball over here and around this area, and so I'm just glad to be part of this team. I guess going through the project here, the master plan, as Tim said, it was an 18-month project, and we worked with Scatliff Miller Murray, planners, landscape architects, and I guess the project is really complicated, and it looks really simple on these images. It looks like just a zone for housing, zone for commercial, but under the surface there's a lot going on with infrastructure, and I guess one of the biggest problems that we ran into is the fact that the site has been an agriculture site for about 90 years. And the infrastructure on the site is not meant really to be developed, as well as a lot of Winnipeg is like that with combined sewer. So we had to, with working with our planners, we knew that we need retention ponds on the site, and there's the Doncaster sewer that runs north to south through the site, and that when that overflows, when there's too much stormwater in there, it dumps out sewage into the Assiniboine River. And that happened, I think, last year. There was an article in the paper about it dumping onto the ice. So that happens, I think, 16 to 26 times a year, according to the city. So there's a lot of work that the city would have to do to prevent that from happening, and that's something that the city at some point will be dealing with. But on our site, we're developing infrastructure on the site, which is a separated sewer and water system, and that's one of the complexities. So in order to, I guess I'll go through a bit of this here. In the, as you'll see, we have the model there, and it kind of coincides with this image here. And you see the light beige there, which is residential. And there's, along the perimeter on the west side, we have some kind of smaller housing units, and those are to blend in with the community. Some of the smaller units on this side here to the west of the site. So that is a transition, not like a stark kind of, you come from the existing community into the new community, and we want it to be seamless. We want it to blend together. So along the west side, we got smaller residential, and then as it moves east, we've got some buildings that become larger, and we've got commercial space along Keniston, and there's some shopping, and I think when we were working with the planner, one of the discussions we had was some of the energy that's happening in the strip mall by Superstore, it just continues through the site, and kind of we activate it in a certain way that it becomes more friendly to the neighborhood with walking and that. So commercial retail, shopping, plaza, walking plaza. There's, see what's the next slide here. Then we get into some commemorative spaces, and we have, as well, we want the site to be able to feature the history of our communities, and as well, I know the veterans and the military, kind of that history is strong in our communities too. So that's something that we always want to keep present on the site. Let's see. Should I just keep going here? I don't know what the future slides are.
As community features and green spaces.
Well, you know, as you can see, a lot of time, work, and effort has went into this, and you know, it's something, and I mentioned it earlier about, you know, us not taking the approach of us and them. And the commemorative spaces, like one of the biggest things that we've heard is, well, what can we do for the community, or how can we help community initiatives through sports or recreation or honoring the site. And so our intention, even though we changed the name and we did it through ceremony, and I want to recognize Dave Crishane, an elder who's since passed on from Saugeen First Nation, had gifted us that name, and it means center of the community, which is really important for us. So there's a lot of key factors as to why this was so important to us as Treaty 1, the reclamation of our territory, give us a basis for our economic development, but it's also working with the community, working with the neighborhood, and building, like right here, right now, we're doing it right now with CMU, that open relationship. When they sent over pictures of our logo on their uniforms, it was amazing. It was so awesome to see, and I thank you again for that. And it's something that we want to develop and formulate that relationship. That's why we put so much time and effort into our market research, to understand and start to communicate and find out, okay, well, what does the public want to see? And one of the things that we've done since our inception is we went coast to coast. We went to almost every major urban economic development zone in Canada. When we found two things, the ones that are very successful have a great relationship, not only with the neighborhood, but the municipality. And they have a good governance structure. And they also have the ability to raise capital. They have the ability to create jobs. They have the relationships that are needed. And my colleague here had mentioned that earlier, that it's not something that's new to any of us. And we've all specialized in different areas, but with those specialties coming together makes a strong team. And there's only 5 of us here, but there's 36,000 members that we have. We also have a team of about 14 additional people that are on our team that help Jolene in governance, that help Dave in design, help Tim in economic development. And the chief's the chief now, so he has a full community behind him. But those are the things that, as we move forward, this is not the only engagement that we want. We want to be able to, you know, get a call and, hey, we want to do another town hall. Okay, no problem. So as we start to grow and formulate, we want to be able to, that's our commitment, is to be able to work with the community, answer questions, and be there.
Can I add something?
Yes.
What I wanted to add is when we first started this project, you know, we did market research, and we did a lot of sending out postcards of information. At the time, there was a scan done about the approval rating on this project. It was only 30% approval rating on the site when it was called, you know, the Capiang Barracks, because there was no information sent to you. There was hardly any discussions going on in other than just assumptions, right? So as we started working on the project, we started engaging more people. We started releasing more information, and you know, we hired a strong communications team, because you know, it's very important for you to get information from us. So there is no guessing on what we're doing. And as time progressed, I talked about that town hall meeting, you know, where we showed 3 preferred concept plans, and we had 800 people watching us live that evening. It's a historic evening for us, and because it was a turning point on the project. After that evening, and after a subsequent release of the master plan on the media, we reached an audience of 8 million people before the full master plan was released. That's, the TV, print media, and social media. And a scan was done on that, and we had approval rating of over 70%. Gone from 30 to 70. It's because of the information that we shared with you and the engagement we did with the city and our neighbors and our citizens of Treaty 1. So I'm proud to say that we got the approval rating of greater 70%, and the audience that we reached is because of strong communications.
I just want to add.
Awesome.
Waylon.
Okay.
So I just wanted to add to what was said here in terms of the site. So we're really looking for seamless integration. So we don't want somebody to look across the street and be like, oh, there's a completely different community in the way that it wouldn't fit in. However, you will know that it is a completely different community because we have design standards. So everything that's built there has to conform to the design standards that we have, that Dave's a part of. So we put our call for proposals out there and selected a team to come up with those design standards. So everything that's built there, from the houses to the commercial spaces, all have to meet those design standards. And as well, Dave talked about the retention ponds to alleviate some of that groundwater going into that combined sewer system. We're also looking at other environmentally sustainable things that we can do, and we have a really great opportunity now, because a lot of environmental sustainable things that happen, it's an infill, or it's a refit or a renovation to something that's already existing, but we're starting from scratch with this space. And because we're doing that, we have the ability to put things in to start. So Dave and I have met with, what is he called?
Oh, we met with Dudley Thompson.
Yeah, but what kind of architect is he?
Sustainability expert.
Okay. So he's a sustainability expert, and we met with him, and he showed us some really great things that are happening all around the world, and new technologies, even in terms of the materials that we're looking at for building our roads. So all through our negotiations with the city of Winnipeg, we kept saying, well, our standards will be at par or better. For instance, our roads will always be better than yours. So in that way, you will know the difference, because our roads won't have potholes. Yeah, but that's the opportunity that we have right now, is to look at those really great technologies that are out there now and start incorporating some of them. And we're looking at living roofs, and can we reuse gray water, and what kinds of eco-friendly materials are we building with, and things like that, and quality of air even within the buildings, and how that quality of air would be better for the people who work in there. And then just in terms of leasing and things like that, like it's not going to be a transient place. Like the leases will be very long-term leasing going on there. So we're trying to build a really, really strong foundation, for the reasons that Chief Blue Sky mentioned. We have communities that need those resources, and this is an opportunity for us to, utilize the resources here in Winnipeg and the people that are here in Winnipeg to generate revenue, and that revenue can go back to our communities and can be reinvested. So we're really looking at building generational wealth with this development.
Awesome. Well said. I think that, again, we're Murphy's Law, right? We were like, okay, we'll try and stretch it out for 45 minutes. That was 45 minutes, blew right by. And so we want to open it up for some questions. Maybe we'll, questions right there. So floor is open. If anybody wants to ask any questions, ask away. While we're waiting, I'll share with you. So in 2019, when we took over, there was 5 of us. Tim was mentioning, and really we were gifted a great task, and it was, not only from an economic development perspective, but also the reclamation of our territory, the reclamation of our nation. Chief Blue Sky, when he speaks in the public, he mentions like we didn't give any of that up, and so when we were tasked to design a logo, design a flag. So we designed the logo, we sent it out, right? We sent it out and we created our first flag. So our first flag is Treaty 1 Development Corporation. That was our first one.
But that logo on this banner here, you
Yes.
see the name Treaty 1, and this, to the left of that, that was designed by a grade 12 student in R.B. Russell.
Yes.
We did a call out for a design contest, and that was the winning design for our grade 12 student.
Yes, so that was actually going to be our flag. And the former chairperson at the time, he phoned me up one day. He says, I'm driving down the road. I seen our flag. The wind was blowing the other way, so it was backwards. He said, we can't have that. So we went back to the drawing board, and we as a team, we started talking about, okay, well, what can we do? How can we create the flag? So it has to tell a story. So this flag actually tells the story of Treaty 1. For as long as the sun shines, the grass grows and the rivers flow, our treaties will be in place. And we added the red circle, and we added the 7 rays, so that represents our 7 communities, but also the 7 teachings. And then there's a red line representing the red road. And it's something that for us was very important. And when we start to show we showed our shareholders 100% buy-in, because it did exactly what we designed it to do. It tells a story. And since that time in 2020, it's flying at the City Hall. It's at the Bomber Stadium. It is school divisions. I even seen an apartment with it flying up in an apartment, so I don't know how it got there, but
St. Paul's.
yeah.
Job sites, the PCL, the City of Portage Prairie flies it.
Yes. And we actually have a gift before we're going to as well for our friends here as well. We have a gift that we want to give. But again, quick story. So we have questions. Yes.
Oh, sir, can you go to the mic, please? Yeah, there's 2 mics, one here and then there.
So Ian Marshall, I'm a local resident. Is this on? Is it working? Yeah, so timeline, when will the building start? Now, I'm guessing it's a multi-year project. So, and where will it start? Will it start from one end and work the way up? What's the timeline on this?
So it's a 15-year build-out. Like there's a lot of things that are happening right now. So the intention is, from a governance perspective, is that we started the process for it to become urban economic development zone. So our plan, me as CEO, what my task in life is to be able to go and raise the capital required. So as soon as it is announced, soon thereafter, depending on if it's winter or not, we have our infrastructure plan in place. So there's a lot of infrastructure that's required for the site. And so on block A, B, you can see block A in the corner there. Maybe I could get my model Dave.
Vic, or can you bring up that site plan again? Even? That'd be better.
So block A, we've planned out. It's a self-performing site. Block B, C, D, and E. C, D, and E are our friends, the Canada Lands Company. We have a commitment together because, again, their objective in life is to be Canada's developers, and we recognize that. So we've committed via partnership to co-invest in the infrastructure required. It is something that is a huge capital investment. So we will and have committed to invest multi-millions of dollars into the infrastructure. And we started that process, as well as from an economic development perspective. We're going to be investing a lot of money for blocks A, B. Those are the first 2. So our plan is a 5-year time build out on that. But overall, it's a 15-year plan.
So we had hoped to start building this year. So D&D is the current owner of that property still. It is extremely difficult to get onto the site. So we're having an event there actually this week, and just to have, put up some tents and be able to have some people on the site, we had to get all kinds of permits, and it took us about at least 5 months, I think, to receive those permits. So we've been trying to get permits to drill test holes, because we do have to put all new infrastructure in there throughout the whole site. And we can't even get on to drill test holes. So we have to, everything is a cost. We have to have security, and then we need insurance. And what was the other thing? It was something crazy.
Insurance, they want to know who's on the site, what equipment, where exactly they're going to walk, what time of day they're going to walk on the site.
There's even somebody sitting there with unlock the padlock, and you got to pay him.
Yes. So it's extremely expensive to even just, and a lot of work, and we've tried to get permits to do different things, or we have gotten permits, and even to, there's no record anymore of where the level of elevation is that what it's called?
Yeah, there's over the years have been so many surveys done that the city doesn't know exactly which is right. So we're starting all over and redoing it all.
So even to get the permits to do that took months and months and months. So we had hoped to have the creation this year. We will have it this year. I don't know if we're going to get there before it snows. And once you start building after the snow, it adds 30%. So our goal right now is to start infrastructure in the spring.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Jolene. Next question.
Two questions, if I may. I see that part of the site is designated educational. Can you explain some of the various programs you have in mind or are in the works? My second question is, I'm curious, I'm imagining there were some fairly complex negotiations between Treaty 1 and Canada Land Corporation, and how it came up that they have now 32% participation in the land itself. Can you say a little bit more? I'm just kind of curious what complex negotiations resulted in that, if that's possible.
I'll pass the mic over to our chair. Do you want me to start off with the first question? Yeah. Education. So short answer in regards to education, yes. So we are looking at those type of initiatives. The type right now is we don't have that determined, but we've engaged in some really important things over the last couple of months. One is language retention, reclamation of our language, and again, implementation of those languages. So there will be a facility there. As to the type, and again, we want to make sure it's synergistic and complementary and open to everyone. And so that's the key for us. So our commitment is there to have something. Exactly what that is, we don't know yet.
Yeah, so we've had discussions with some post-secondary institutions to have a campus there, but we've also been looking at like a private school model where it would be a full Anishinaabe immersion school. We have a lot of our members go elsewhere for school because they're going for athletics or they're going for different types of academics and things like that. And so, some of our kids are getting sent outside of Winnipeg or outside of Manitoba to seek those opportunities because they're not necessarily available here. But also, we're looking again to New Zealand and what they did to bring back their language. And they were able to do it within 20 years. And one of the things that they did is they had full immersion schools. And so that's something that we're definitely exploring right now. So if that's the way we go, it would be a K to 12 and probably similar to a private school model. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just on that note as well as like Broken Head, we have 2/3 of our total population that live in the city of Winnipeg. So again, I would argue that's probably the same as the other First Nations as well. It's got a large population that lives in Winnipeg and obviously goes to school and has post-secondary aspirations and so on. I know my daughters do. So it's not, for me, it's just accommodating that population as well. We have a large number of trades. We got doctors, we got lawyers, we got people that are going to be here building this site as well. Our hopes is to see a city of Winnipeg services, but for Naawi-Oodena, hopefully, and ideally, being maintained by our own people as well. It's something good for our children to see and their children to see as well. But in terms of the negotiations, it was, even from the beginning, whenever I first sat down in 2004, we weren't even, at that time it was zero acres, 0% was going to flow to Treaty 1. And, the point that Jolene referenced earlier in terms of the strategic disposal policy, that gets into a little bit more complicated stuff, but the Treasury Board has a policy, normally would fall under the routine disposal, under our framework agreement that we signed for treaty land entitlement. And treaty land entitlement agreements are essentially treaty implementation agreements, right? addressing the shortfall from 150 years ago, and we're dealing with those things today. But in that agreement, it had the routine disposal was what was in ours. So we would be given first priority on any federal surplus properties that would become available. Canada changed that policy unilaterally without any of our input and essentially breached our agreement. And so from that point, that's where the basis of our court case started. And that's when we started to make arguments with Canada, is to say, no, that we're entitled to the whole property, because that's literally the agreement you signed. You know, and anybody in this room has ever signed an agreement, you understand what that means, right? You expect someone to hold up their end of the agreement just as we do when we sign it. So at that time, you know, we started off the lower level, I guess, where I was at the implementation officer level. We were arguing back and forth with the province and the federal government. Then they wanted to get into the strategic disposal, which they put in place. But essentially, I'll make it a bit of a long story short. Canada Lands Corporation was about to receive the whole 160 acres through that strategic disposal, which essentially went around our agreement. You know, those TLE agreements weren't given priority anymore, and Canada changed the policy to go like that, around it, and then they're going to just transfer it to CLC. So that was how it initially started, and we argued, and at that time, again, 160 acres was to flow to CLC. Sorry, I'm just getting. But the negotiations went on, and you know, I remember a time where there was about, I think we were only being offered 30% of the property, the site itself. Canada wanted to avoid going back to court. Canada wanted to avoid, you know, getting into more of a legal dispute that they weren't going to win. You know, because obviously the agreement is what it is, the TLE is what it is. The basis of Winnipeg even opening up as a municipality, the whole basis of Manitoba being created was based on a treaty agreement that we made in 1871. So to breach that and to go back to say then you're essentially breaching the whole treaty agreement that we have with our First Nations people. So of course it goes back that far from our perspective. So again, we ended up negotiating, and Canada said, well, we need something that goes to CLC. So this is the agreement we ultimately ended up with, was the 109 acres to flow to the treaty, to the First Nations. But just to be clear, though, the remaining properties is CLC's to be developed and will be serviced and will be sold. And that selling process isn't discriminatory. It's open to anyone. So again, from our perspective, any properties within the city of Winnipeg, especially communities like myself that have treaty land entitlement, are open for us to purchase and acquire and to move through that same process. This process here was done through a comprehensive settlement agreement. And that's where it's outside of the TLE agreement was a specific claim initially, which was saying Broken Head was shorted, 3,500 acres. We need to be addressed that from 1870 till now. And in this case, from that agreement, we were shorted the ability to acquire the Capillon Barracks. So then the comprehensive settlement agreement came in play, and the 7 First Nations negotiated the agreement that you see today. It was quite costly, and ultimately we are where we are, and I feel like it's a bit of a win-win, I would say, for all parties. It's unfortunate. I think everybody in this room can agree to that. It's unfortunate that it had to sit there for this long. It should never have been fought in the first place. The agreement should have been implemented. We would probably already see, 15 years of development already done if they would have just held up their end of the bargain. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. Is all we ever do is, fulfill our end of our agreements, and we end up in situations like this.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions?
Hi, I'm John Dewick. I work at CMU here, and we are really, really excited to have Capillon, to have Naawi-Oodena as a neighbor. We are a community that lives on campus. A lot of students live here, and this is a really vibrant place where students and faculty and community members come together to be together. And I think it's going to be fantastic for our students to be able to access the kinds of services and educational opportunities and art. The things you're building are so exciting, and I am inspired by your story. What I wonder is, what do you hope for from us as neighbors? We're a university community that's living and working and worshiping together. What do you hope for from us? We're excited to be in relationship.
Well, for me, speaking only for the Development Corporation, collaboration and communication obviously is really important to us. We want to build things that are obviously complementary and not only generate revenue but provide products and services, safe, affordable, or things to do. And we want to ensure, because we are making a major capital investment, and we want to be able to have those lines of communication with the neighborhood. So for us, communication is the key. The nation perspective, I'll leave that to Chief and Jolene.
I just got one point. There's, especially in terms of institutions like this, is take the opportunity to learn. And I think what happens is, we have the largest Indigenous population in Winnipeg. That's just not really being showcased and supported and highlighted. When we talk about seamless from one neighborhood to the next, I don't believe that seamless should exclude my cultural, shouldn't exclude what makes us as Indigenous people. The names of the sites, those are things that should be embraced and shouldn't be fought. Those are things that I feel is what this city needs. It needs to be colorful. 60 years ago, it wasn't so colorful. 50 years ago, it wasn't so colorful. And I think our language is beautiful. I think my people are beautiful. And I really do think that the universities out here should really look at this project, because for the past 13 years when I was the lands manager for my community, I worked with the faculty of architecture, and we would host students. And I usually did about 4 to 5 students would come through Brokenhead and would assist us with designing, doing charrettes and so on and so forth of our properties. But what I started to talk to them and started to understand from a university perspective what the curriculums that were being developed and that were in place didn't include urban reserves, didn't include, it was the faculty of city planning that the masters of city planning students that were coming through, the only learning that they would get was interacting with us directly. It wasn't anywhere in the curriculum. It's just like when you look at a land transfer or land transaction. If you buy a house or you buy a property, inside there's boxes that you check. What type of transaction is it? Is it agricultural? Is it da 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 and so on? But it still never doesn't recognize this. Is it TLE? Is it treaty land? Is it First Nation? Is it whatever? We're still not being recognized in those types of things. And even in the curriculum that you're teaching the next generation are still not learning about this stuff, still not learning it from our perspective. And at some point, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a problem by not allowing them to understand what systems are in place on a federal piece of property that they call Indian reserves. What is the First Nation Lands Management Act, and how does it apply to a property like that? These are things that I think need to start to be taught, not just on a First Nation level, because we've got a lot of people that are non-First Nation that are really excited about the opportunity to work on this site. I worked with about 5 to 6 per year, so I had about 30 master students come through Brokenhead, that I had some sort of impact on or taught them something. But again, it's a very small population percentage. But I really do think that that's one of the things that the CMU and other education facilities can do is learn.
Also, if I want to also add to this conversation, what can you do is you understand that we're big spenders and we are big contributors to the Manitoba economy. And not everything is given to us for free. There's a big investment from the private sector into First Nation business. First Nations in Manitoba, we contribute $9.2 billion to the Manitoba economy through our spending as individuals, as spending through our governments and projects in our respective communities. That's $9.2 billion just behind agriculture and ahead of the service industry, meaning restaurants and entertainment. So we're big business, and we spend a lot of money into the Manitoba economy and invest into the Manitoba economy, and understand that, and that we're big taxpayers as well. So just to understand that point is, and get that point across, is that there's a big business, there's First Nation business. We account for about perhaps 10% of the Manitoba population, but we create a lot of business in this province.
Thanks, Tim. Joe, you want to add anything?
I think they both said it all.
Awesome.
But yeah, we do, we are big spenders. The second largest contribution to the Manitoba economy after manufacturing. And that's really with being what I say is more passive ways of the economy and not so many active ways. And so that contribution is going to skyrocket from us once we're, really active in the economy. So for what I think universities can do and should do is exactly what was already said, is that teaching and that sharing and that learning. I think that there are all kinds of things that happen with First Nations people that mainstream populations just don't understand and they don't know about, they've never learned about it. And so there are a lot of misconceptions out there, and those misconceptions, can sometimes cause resentments. And, Tim said, we are taxpayers. I live in the city of Winnipeg. I have to pay property tax. I own a home, and so, I go into the store here, I have to pay taxes. So those are some of the misconceptions. But the other thing we want the university to do is for sure encourage your students, come spend money over here. That's really what we want, is everybody to come and spend their money with us. And that's why the research that was done is so important, to ensure that the services and the things that we're providing there are not already being provided, or they're being provided by us in a different way that's a gap maybe in services or retail that's in the area. And so, we are really trying to make it open and welcome to everybody to come and learn. And we have a plan for a number of museums there, so that, could become part of the curriculum. Is we will be opening a Treaty 1 museum that, focuses on the history of Treaty 1 and our 7 communities and how they came to be and all about them. But also, an art gallery that's showcasing the art that we have and the artists that we have, and just the design itself, led by Dave and his team, all Indigenous architects, all Indigenous interior designers, all Indigenous landscape architects. And so you really will, while we want that seamless integration with what's in the community, like residential and commercial use and where those are all placed, at the same time, you'll see natural prairie grasses that would have grown here before, and other elements to our buildings and our designs.
How many have been to the new diversity garden at Assiniboine Park? I've been involved in that project for about 7 years now with the Assiniboine Conservancy there. But for instance, I guess as an example of seamless integration, and Gord had mentioned language, I was approached by them 7 years, myself and my daughter, who's also a designer, and we start developing the planning around the site of the new building that opens in November. It's like a $90 million project, probably over that now. I know it went over budget, but but one of the things that talking about how we contribute and how we connect, the Assiniboine Park, which I had mentioned before, that I grew up across the river, and with my parents, we'd come to the park as a little kid. But you think of Assiniboine Credit Union, Assiniboine, the river. We started that work years ago, and with the park, and the word Assiniboine is a Cree word, which means people that cook with stones. It's Nakota. It's talks about the Lakota people. So when we started to look at that project and look at the word, and that it's more like almost like a commercial or corporate identity, that word, but it really talks about our traditional ways and the ancestors and the people who have been on the site. And so those kind of things are what our project here, it unlocks those things. It brings in language, and it places who we are. And this area that we're sitting in here, our intent is to open that discussion of the treaty land, not only before the treaties, like going back to like our ancestors and what this land means to all of us. And so, that's kind of work that I've been involved in, so that we, as a team, that's kind of the flavor of what this project is really about. It's about enriching our identity as people from Winnipeg. Winnipeg, Manitoba, all these terms are all Indigenous terms. So we're adding, it's not only words now, we're connecting that with the land itself. So that's what this project, the development and the cultural aspect of the connection, what this project is really about.
Thanks, Dave. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have a question.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
I'd invite you to help me understand what your vision is. Winnipeg is a city with large issues around homelessness and poverty. And paint me a picture, or help me understand how your project will work towards easing those things and helping with those things. And I mean, I can see it, but I'd love to have you sort of connect those dots for me. Thank you.
I'll make a couple of comments, and then I'll let anybody jump in afterwards. So, I mean, first and foremost, I'd mentioned the complexity of the deal. One is not only reclamation of our territory as a nation, but it's building up that governance structure. So we talked about the co-management agreement, and so Jolene, as Director of Governance, is going to be basically leading that charge and implementing. So we've committed, and we've met with the City of Winnipeg on numerous occasions to talk about a working group. So the chief said it as well, a community, or did you say that, Tim? One of you guys said it. But it really is important to have that collaboration table. So we did make that commitment with the City of Winnipeg. We do recognize that it is an issue. The one thing that we have in regards to our market research studies is the value of the property. Our intention is to ensure that everything is market driven. So it's really important for us that that's the case. Having said that, we're also working with other initiatives to try and help alleviate some of those situations outside, because Treaty 1 territory is vast. And so we're working with other organizations to try and help alleviate that in other areas as well. So we do have in our 15-year build-out, Blocks A and Blocks B do not have individual households on it. We are looking at an apartment complex, but there's a strategy behind that as well. We have a tremendous amount of students, young people that need to find a safe place to live. That their biggest struggle in life is to find a place in the city of Winnipeg. I did that when I first moved here 21 and a half years ago to go to university. We couldn't find an apartment. It was the last weekend before I had to start school that I finally found a place to live, and it was just by talking to my landlady, and we lived there for 6 years, not an issue at all. So those are some of the things. So we do have a well-timed out strategy for that. Our intention is, we know the market value of the territory. It is a huge investment for us. It helps us. We want to be able to build, raise capital, do a lot of things. So we are working as a nation together with the City of Winnipeg. We do have a plan that we're working with other organizations to help alleviate that situation. I'll pass it over to our chief.
Yeah, and again, we've had, I think, we're at close to 60 community engagements with our home communities as well. So our 7 First Nations, and a lot of these issues come forward. Homelessness, affordable housing, school, so on and so forth. And we do have to remind our communities as well, is that this is a economic pursuit. We're looking at making generate as much resources as we can. But in that conversation with those engagements, it's the same thing though. This isn't the all-in, we're not all in on this one property, and this isn't the only opportunity we have to work with the City of Winnipeg to address issues like homelessness. It's something that has to be done like Waylon was referencing, you know, it has to put some thought into it and some work with not just the Treaty 1 communities, but there's a large Indigenous population in Winnipeg that are also from other territories as well. So it's not just a Treaty 1 population issue, it's also a transient issue, because what I did find, anyway, I don't want to get into that, but it is the case that people come and what people identify as homeless might not necessarily be what they are. They could be just caught up in an addiction, drinking or so on and so forth. But anyways, it is something that I stress to not only our membership, but here tonight, is that this isn't, the former Capiong, Naawi-Oodena site isn't meant to fix everything, right? It's something that is a step, it's a start, it's to generate revenues for us to start putting and investing into not only our local initiatives, but maybe we even look beyond that into issues here in Winnipeg as well. We have to have a shared responsibility with that. And I think that's been kind of brought to my attention in more than one town hall and with the City of Winnipeg as well, as to, you know, how do we collaborate on addressing the issue itself. So it's going to be a long-term strategy. We didn't get here overnight, right? It was almost like, what is it, you know, being chief of the community, you know, I used to do lands and economic development. Now I'm in education, I'm in health, I'm in all these things that I was never involved with before. But one of the things that I was learning about last week was the first case of diabetes in one of our communities was in the 50s, you know, 60s. We didn't have diabetes. This is where we are today, right? Because of the foods that we're consuming and the lifestyles that we're in, and this, what I would consider a stagnant lifestyle of living in one spot versus what we used to do traditionally. And the foods that we're eating aren't the same anymore. You know, even the land isn't the same here anymore. The water isn't the same. So that all impacts our people that have been living here for thousands of years. So again, even thinking that way and trying to figure out a strategy on how to address that, there's so many things that we have to look at, partnering with all sorts of groups.
Yeah, so again, just to reiterate, this site is to make money. I can't say that enough. So we are looking at, you know, some affordable flux in our apartments, especially for our students, some of our seniors. We know that there's a huge need for wheelchair accessible apartments in the city of Winnipeg. It is almost impossible to find and fully wheelchair accessible, meaning lower counters, lower cook surfaces, things like that. So those are the things that we're looking at as well. But the site is definitely market driven in terms of the rents there, and so that doesn't really help to address the homelessness issue. But what it does is, again, it puts those revenues back into our communities so that we're able to invest those things in programs and services that do address homelessness. But we are in talks, like Waylon said, with different groups, with Manitoba Housing, and Homelessness Winnipeg, things like that, to look at other sites that might be available or other buildings that we may be able to purchase and things like that, so that we can do things to try to address homelessness. But it isn't one answer. There are so many underlying factors to why people are or become homeless. And so those things have to be addressed as well, right? And that has to do with, you know, our healthcare system and how it's provided to us, as well as our mental health supports, which I don't know if any of you have ever had to try to access mental health supports, especially for an adolescent, but let me tell you, it is an ordeal. It is a huge ordeal to access those supports. And those are all things that contribute to that homelessness. So it's not something that Treaty 1 can, you know, address on our own. So that's definitely something that we all have to come together as the city of Winnipeg, as people who live here, and work together to solve those issues.
Thank you, Jolene. Any other questions?
I'm very grateful that you all are here with us at CMU. I also work here. Grateful for your sustainability goals and the kind of work you're putting into your design and the really interesting I love seeing that it's like a piece of art to see it like that. So really grateful for that. I have to admit that I am completely in car culture, but I have a son who, if he were here, would always ask the question, what can we do about bike culture or creating more opportunities? And as you talk about widening Kenaston, and I heard us all get very excited about that for cars, he would wonder, and so I'm asking on his behalf, how can you folks, in terms of your development and that whole long strip on Kenaston, put, some pressure on Winnipeg to remember how to, include bike kind of accessibility in that very great corridor that people could start using and feel really excited about. So just asking on his behalf.
Well, I mean, it's something that definitely that we could bring to the table. Like I said, we have a collaboration table with the city of Winnipeg. It's something that, obviously is recognizing the importance to our community, that it is an initiative that is either something that we support, and it's something that we could bring to the table in Jolene's discussion. So Jolene, there's a task for you there to in the first collaboration discussion.
In the design of this roads within this community, there was a team called the Indigenous design team. On the Indigenous design team was an architect, an interior design, landscapers, a museum curator, and somebody was involved in active transportation. And these were all Indigenous people. And this person, I can't remember his name. I'm hoping Dave could help me remember his name. But he does tours in the city by bike. You meet him up, and he'll take you all to all the great sites in Winnipeg by bike. So he was involved in this project as well. It was the Indigenous design team. Dave, do you remember his name?
His last name was Alfonso. I believe.
Alfonso.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was considered in terms of the movement of not only bike transportation, but just the movement of pedestrian traffic on the site, and the way our roads and our sidewalks are designed. That's all been considered within this community. And
Yeah,
we want to be a model for that for the rest of the city of Winnipeg.
We're looking at, actually, with Canada Lands, we've been doing some research on walkable areas, like walkable shopping areas. So we found some sites in Scottsdale, Arizona, in Surrey, in Vancouver, and we're just like looking at some of the qualities of some of these spaces. And some of them do have, like, of course, bike paths are, it just makes sense. If there's a sidewalk, you want to have bikes separate. So, we're looking at all of that, and we're looking around the world at different examples. Because when I talk to the city and I talk to different people, advocates for bike paths, I talk to them and I say, where in Winnipeg are good examples? And they said, there's none in Winnipeg. You have to look in Europe and around the world. So we're looking at those. So we're still this is a high level plan. So the other layer of planning to that is to come in the future.
Thank you, Dave. Any other questions? I think we have 2 minutes left, right?
I'm going to say that many of you were up until 3 a.m. last night with your last one, so you can have your last 2 minutes off tonight. So I just want to say this has been a tremendous gift to us, a gift of learning. The communication that Tim talked of as being really essential to this, it's the quality of your communication and the quality of friendship that you offer with your communication that allows this to catch on. And so this has caught on. And so I want to say tonight, thank you for this gift. We commit ourselves to the kind of neighbors that learn from you continuously, that we look forward to. Okay, so I don't know what the order of the protocol is, but first I'll just say a thank you to Chief Blue Sky, to Jolene, Dave, Tim, and Waylon. This has been an incredible gift of gracious and warm and interesting communication.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much. And again, this is a little something that we wanted to present a small gift, and it is our flag. It does mean a lot to us because we created it as a nation. It's something that's really important to us, so we wanted to give CMU a flag from Treaty 1.
Thank you. We received this with honor, so thank you so much. So thanks to all for your questions, for your listening, for your learning, and for all the others that you'll engage with what you've heard and gotten excited about this evening and this communication. And yes, we'll come. We'll come to the restaurants, we'll come to the stores, and we'll be neighbors together. Thank you. Awesome. Good night.